December meeting of the Citizens Communications Council, and we'll move swiftly to our first item on the agenda, which is Radnor Studio 21, General Manager George Strimmel. Good evening, George.
Good evening. Thank you very much. I can be quite brief and to the point.
That's a good thing.
I can announce a significant movement on the various discussions we have with Comcast, that whole thing has come to a conclusion.
Do you have the cameras?
Yes, we have the cameras. This very day that we are up and running. It was a joint effort. Radnor Studio 21 put in $4,989 into it, into the total package of everything, which meant an upgrade in both wiring, if you will, in the new cameras and in other items that have now been fixed. So everything is up to date and running. That was the first thing we did with Comcast. The other is that they have bought 51% of us, and it paid us $6 billion, and we are throwing in, no, that was NBC Universal, that's not us. We are much smaller, but you will note that our deal took longer.
Yeah.
Okay, otherwise.
So essentially, excuse me for a minute,
Yes.
but essentially the back obligations are fulfilled, up to date, we're square. Is that correct?
It is a clean slate as of this day.
Okay,
The only thing
good.
left, as the ordinance calls for, is the quarterly inspections, and I simply don't know where we are on that. But we are not behind time on any of that.
Okay, that's the point I wanted to make. Okay, go ahead, I'm sorry. Didn't mean
Well,
to interrupt.
nothing except on the programming. Obviously, as we move into the holiday season, we are celebrating and programming and basically looking forward to the new year and new accomplishments with the cameras that we have now, and we'll be up and running into production tomorrow. We're left with some things that we would like on our wish list, and they are some new production facilities, such as the TriCaster, which I understand the school is getting one. So we would like to have one too, and we're looking for that out of our funds, and the same with maybe additional cameras and certainly new lighting. We look forward to a great 2010.
Oh, we're happy to hear that. Any questions for Radnor Studio 21? Thank you
Except
very
what
much.
we're going to do with the $6 billion.
Yeah,
No, we're not
okay.
going to. Okay.
Yeah, spend it slowly, please.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you. Next item is Comcast.
Good evening. Well, it seems that George took two items from my list. One, the camera issue, which has been resolved.
You have 5 seconds to brag. Go ahead.
Well, camera issue, and of course, as you know, we had a very exciting announcement about 2 weeks ago with the transaction announced between GE and Comcast for NBC Universal. So, but like I said, George covered my first two topics. Also, another exciting topic today is that Comcast launched Fancast Xfinity TV, which basically means that our high-speed internet customers and a customer with both high-speed internet and video can watch video online anywhere as long as they log in with their Comcast information. So if they have premium channels at home, they can watch premium channels from their laptop, which is pretty exciting. It's still in a beta phase, but again, we're very excited about that.
Sounds like it's going to hit productivity in the country pretty bad.
Well, and I know that Kevin Broadhurst has been in touch about getting some information to draft our next franchise agreement. I know that we'll all stay on top of that. And
Just to comment on it, we're not going to negotiate the contract at these meetings.
no,
And I got an email from Kevin today, and I will talk to him directly about arranging the next meeting we have with he and Steve.
Right. Okay.
So that's that.
great. And following up on the DTA, the converter conversation that we had last month, it is corporate policy that we are only providing 3 units per school. That's our national policy. And as I mentioned last month, that is based on average. And again, the fact that we're supposed to provide one drop per school. So,
Did we raise the question, or did you raise the question as to whether or not the school could buy these in a one-time transaction as opposed to a monthly rental? You know, a monthly rental is, you know,
$199 per month.
yeah, per, and we have 250 rooms, so it becomes an onerous amount of money on the township's or the school district's budget. And I thought we asked to see if we could get that clarified, whether or not we can buy those, or the school district can buy those.
Okay, and I apologize, I did not have that in my notes last time, so it's written down now. I will report back, I promise.
Yeah, would you do that?
Maybe you could give the council an email on it. If you'll send an email to Tom, he
Okay.
can forward it to the rest of us.
Okay,
Do you have my email address?
yes, I do.
Okay.
Mhm.
I appreciate that.
Absolutely, and I apologize if I did not take note last month.
And there's one other thing that I would like you to investigate. Is there a device which essentially would reconvert your digital signal to analog signals so that the school district could use the tuners that already exist on the televisions in the classrooms?
Currently, our signal is being converted. I believe the answer is no.
Well, would you check
Sure.
with your technical people and see, because I
Yeah,
think
it's real a retrofitting
some of our
technology.
technical people think that there may be such a device.
Okay,
One would assume if you can go from analog to digital, you can go from digital to analog.
well,
Whether
Initially-
we're sure you might not want to, but that's not the question.
no, and that's previously with the digital transition, the FCC mandated digital transition, we are technically converting the digital signal to analog, which is what that's why the digital, it's a DTA, digital to analog converter. So that's the unit that we're talking about. The units that we are providing 3 of for each school is a digital to analog converter. So it is already converting it back. But from your question, I was assuming you meant something other than the
Something
DTA
that
that
would enable the classrooms to use the tuners on the television set.
to
the way
use
they
the
have
tuners
been.
on the televisions.
And is there such a device that could be placed where the signal comes into the building? To
No,
do
there's,
that. No way to do
no,
that?
there's no way to do that.
And just so you understand, having 1 or 3 means that we would have to have a television room to take students to. Because even if we've been talking about this, so let's say we designate the library as the location to use one of these converters on a TV, you're assuming that there are no classes going on in the library, so that when you want to watch something, you're going to bring a class to the library. We don't have empty spaces that we can set up to use this.
Well, and I think that's what we touched on last month, and I had done a little research after the last meeting, which basically most of the programming that's available, is on at 4:30 a.m., 5:30 a.m. So I think that might be a discussion we could have at another time to see how the teachers are actually utilizing it, because as far as I know, they should be taping it currently or using webcasts, because really things just aren't, and we had the discussion last month that, the odds of a Henry Ford biography airing on the History Channel at 2:37 when a class begins are rather slim. And if that teacher has more than one class that she'd like to teach about Henry Ford, the odds of that airing, twice a day at the proper times. So they must be taping or doing something in order to utilize the cable in the classroom.
So that makes a lot of sense for a lot of classrooms and perhaps even at the elementary level. But when you talk to middle school and high school social studies teachers and what's going on in the world and current events and wanting to, watch things as they happen on CNN and, that sort of thing, that's a tough argument to make with them. It's basically social studies teachers that are just at such a loss.
Okay, and I think, again, I'd be happy to have a discussion. I happen to be our cable in the classroom expert. And we can discuss ways that they might be able to use it. But again, that's our national mandate that we're offering 3 per school.
I think you just answered my next question. Is there someone in the Comcast bureaucracy whose job it is to pay attention to educational issues?
Well, educational issues regarding cable in the classroom,
Yes,
or
exactly, and that's you.
I'm the guru.
All right. I would suggest that you set aside some time to meet with Ms. Casano and the technical people at the school district so that you might be able to work some of these issues directly. Can you do that?
I can, and it would also be helpful if we can find out how the teachers are currently using it, so we can sort of build from there. But I'll give you my card.
Okay.
We can email.
Good, thank you.
Thank you, Kate.
Any other questions?
Any other questions for Comcast?
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Kate. I can see my Verizon man just down on, ready to come through the line.
Good evening, everybody. For Verizon this month, just a couple of things. First, notification has gone out about some channel changes on our HD. It's not going to affect anybody's packages or anything like that. We're just moving from channel 501 to 511, so nobody's going to lose the channels or anything like that. And there's 4 channels that are affected just in this local area. So that notice is going out to the customers, I believe, probably sometime this week or early next. I sent it out a couple of weeks ago to the township, and number 2 would be we have a new addition to our widgets feature. Just in time for the holiday season, of course. We are now able to have customers order from the Home Shopping Network via their remote control through the Fios TV network. So that's a new feature that we have added. And also to help those customers that may be having issues with their connection, not only TV, but also any Fios product that we have. We have now launched an in-home agent, which they can download from the Verizon website at verizon.com/connect, where it goes through basically the troubleshooting procedures that they would do if they were to call into our technical center, and it's just the initial troubleshooting stuff so that they don't have to get on the phone and waste their time going through the IRV and all that good stuff to go through and just do the initial troubleshooting. And if they can't find the problem, then they can call in and say that they've already gone through this stuff and hopefully make things and hopefully fix the issue before they have to call, or if they have to call, have already gone through all that troubleshooting work.
Can you review that process again, how you get there?
Go through the how to get to the in-home agent?
The in-home agent.
Yes, you just go to www.verizon.com/connect, and it's software that you download onto your PC that will then walk you through those troubleshooting steps, and it also has a bunch of how-tos on basically how to use the different remotes and all that kind of thing for some folks that may not have been around in the installation and whatnot and didn't see that kind of thing. So, and that's about it for my update.
Any questions? Yeah, John?
Yeah, I have 2 questions that relate to internet service. Are all your internet offerings now compliant with Windows 7? I believe there was a period of time when, when certain of your internet services, specifically the antivirus and internet security services, were not fully compliant with Windows 7. And as people either, this time of year, either get new machines for the holidays or install Windows 7, there might be instances where what they formerly had as part of their package might not be compliant with Windows 7. So has that been taken care of?
I'm not the internet expert, but I can definitely look into that for you. I don't believe that there's an issue ongoing with Windows 7. I believe I would have heard about it if there was, but I'll definitely look into it and make sure everything's compatible with Windows 7.
Okay, and then the other question I had, in the interest of equal time, relates to Macs. And certain subscribers to certain levels of your internet services have the ability to find Wi-Fi hotspots and use those services without any additional charge, as I understand it. But I also understand that service only applies to users of Windows products and not Mac products. Is that again, asking a question you might not know the answer
Yeah.
to, but is that the case? And if that is the case, is it foreseen in the near future that service may be expanded to all users? Because I think for some users, it's an attractive feature, but if you happen to have Macs and Windows machines in the house, like someone I know, there can, I mean, you have to remember which machine to take if you're hitting the road.
Yeah, no, you're right. I don't have the answer to that question right now, but I can definitely research it for you. And I believe if there is an issue, I know Verizon would be addressing that, at the time, because I know Mac versus Windows has been an issue previously. So
Again, if you could reply to those issues to the
Yeah.
chairman by email, if there
Okay.
is any information that needs to be put up on the township website, we can do that.
sure.
Do you have my email?
I do not.
Kate will give it to you.
Okay. I can get it from Jim too, I'm sure.
Okay, any other questions for Verizon?
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Joan, are you satisfied now that you were able to get together with Kate and work out the differences? Good. Old business, status of the communications ordinance. How long
It
did
is.
it take to write the Bible, by the way? I was trying to find something comparative in history.
Yeah, it's up there with repairing cameras, but it's not, it's getting close. It's my hope that this is the last appearance of this item on the old business agenda. We have received comments on the proposed amendments from the interim solicitor and have run those comments by our communications counsel in Washington. Having received the solicitor's comments fairly close to the time of the December meeting of the Planning Commission, I reached out to Mark Rhodes of the Planning Commission, and I think it's clear that both he and we want to appear before the Planning Commission one more time. And it might have been premature to appear at their December meeting, given the outstanding comments of the solicitor and our desire to get feedback from our communications counsel in D.C., given the nature of a couple of the comments that we received. That being the case, we agreed to postpone the appearance before the Planning Commission for the December meeting and to appear at the Planning Commission's January meeting, which, let me find the date of it. It's early in January, though. Where are we here? I believe it's the 5th, but don't hold me to that. But it's either the 4th or the 5th of January, at which time it is hoped that we will be able to fully respond to the Planning Commission's comments, should they have any, or additional questions, should they have any, and then hopefully put the Planning Commission in a position to recommend the amendments for adoption to the Board of Commissioners, which is the next step for those amendments.
Okay, because we have received the comments of Tim Lay from the FCC counsel.
That's right, and we received yesterday or the day before Tim's comments
Right.
on the particular comments raised by the solicitor. So now we're in a position to take a look at those comments, make decisions as to what we need to do, if anything, to the amendments, and then move forward.
So-
Move forward to planning, and then,
So the only step, or the step left is for us to integrate those comments into the existing draft of the ordinance, give it to the Planning Commission, and then they take it to the Board of Commissioners.
that's correct. Assuming that it's acceptable to planning, and we've done everything in our power to accommodate their comments to date. So
Okay.
that's the goal.
So we ought to be able to accomplish that, I would hope. You think, John?
Yeah, I mean, we will be before them.
Yeah, well,
in
I guess what
January.
I'm getting at,
Yeah.
we're not going to go back over the same track again, right?
No,
Okay.
we will implement, or include those comments that make sense to the amendments that we've received lately, and then appear.
That's it.
And then that's
Okay.
it.
All right. So God willing, that'll be done at the January planning meeting.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Wilson.
if I look at my calendar correctly here, And if I have my dates right, on all this, there are a number of pending applications for wireless facilities, which are pending in the township at this point. Assuming the Planning Commission were to approve this ordinance on the 5th, it would then have to be introduced on the 18th and would not be able to be adopted until the commissioners' meeting, first meeting in February. The 60-day period established by the FCC's order, in which municipalities have to make a decision on pending applications, expires on the 18th of January, 17th being a Sunday. So I think it is incumbent upon us to write to the interim township manager and point out to him that under the FCC's order, unless action is taken on these applications by the appropriate body, which in the case of public property would be the Board of Commissioners, and in the case of private property would be the Zoning Hearing Board, unless action is taken on those applications by the 18th of January, the township will be subject to litigation.
Could be subject.
What would be subject and could be sued.
Yeah,
But we would be subject to litigation in which the applicant would seek to have those applications deemed to have been approved. So, well, all I'm saying is we need to notify the appropriate people that there's a time period here and it's running, and there are about 5 applications, I think. 3.
Is that right, Steve?
3 current at this time
3 current applications
that have not been approved.
that are pending, on which a decision has not been made.
That is correct.
So those, there
And one
needs
was-
to be action. Are those all on public property or all on private property? Do you know?
They are private property.
All on private?
Or no, I'm
property.
sorry. 2 are public, I believe, one's
2
private.
on the right of way,
Yes,
because they're pole attachments.
yes.
And Steve, have we done everything we need to do with respect to those applications to put the decision maker in a position to act one way or the other?
That is correct.
Okay.
Bruce, would you draft an email to the township manager?
I think I'll draft a letter and send it to you by
Okay.
email. How's that?
Okay. And we should send it, I think, to the planning commission and to the zoning
It
board.
should be to the zoning board. Well, it should be, I think if we send it to the township manager, he can then forward it to the appropriate other bodies, which would be the zoning board and the board of commissioners.
Okay, and we should ask him to do that in the letter, right?
Yes.
Okay, good. Okay, any new business, additional new business? Shall we sing carols? I'd like to wish, oh, I'm sorry. Public participation, I beg your pardon.
Good evening. John Nagel from Bryn Mawr. There's a couple points I wanted to bring up. The first one, and I'm not sure that you actually have authority here, but I think it'd be appropriate for you folks to weigh in. As you probably know, I do a show on 21 occasionally. I fill in for Joe Kimmel. And this is something that's come up several times before, and there's a 15-minute rule, if you will, for a candidate who's running for office. And that is really tortuous when you're trying to schedule people to get them in, do their interviews and all that. And I'm hoping we can move that to a half hour. We know the history of why that happened, and I think that George has done a good job of keeping the balance so that candidates from both sides, should they wish to be on, have the opportunity. So that's the first thing. Second thing, there's an apartment complex in my ward, and I think the same owner has a complex in the 7th Ward, in which they provide to their residents cable as part of, their service, but it's, I think, hot wire is what they're using. And therefore, the people in those complexes do not have the opportunity to watch government access stations. And there's a lot of people that would love to be involved and understand what's going on in the township, but don't have that capability. So I would like you to look into that for us and see if there's anything that can be done about that.
Anybody have any clue about that?
Well, I mean, my reaction to that is we would be looking to impose upon a private property owner the obligation to avail themselves of a service that is not free, because it's not simply the PEG channels that, maybe Verizon and Comcast can help on this issue, but.
Well, I'm not asking you to solve it tonight.
Yeah.
I'm just asking you to take it under consideration.
Certainly take it under consideration, but I think that's going to be the first impediment that may come up.
On the first point, I think the allocation of television time on Radnor Studio 21 for local political dialogue or whatever, however we categorize that, I think that should be a policy issue for the board of Radnor Studio 21. I don't think we have a role in that.
I'm certain that would make the decision, but
Yeah.
as the public body that people talk to, that's why I came to talk to you folks.
Well, no, we appreciate that, and I think your point's been made. And George, would you take that up with the board?
We have a meeting on Monday,
Because this has been an ongoing discussion there anyway for a long time, hasn't it?
right? And right now is the time to have that discussion.
I intentionally waited
Yeah.
after the elections.
Well, we appreciate that, too.
The last item I want to ask you
Yeah.
about, you mentioned that you're going to be negotiating the new cable agreement.
With Comcast.
With
the
Comcast.
renewal of their existing agreement.
But it sounded like that was not going to be a public process, so when will the public have an opportunity to weigh in on that?
I don't
Once
know
it's
that-
brought to the commissioners?
Historically, what has happened is a subcommittee of this council has negotiated and come forth with a draft, which is then put up for public comment.
Mhm.
That draft is then considered by this council as a whole, and it is either recommended for adoption or not recommended for adoption by the Board of Commissioners. And then there is, then assuming that we recommend the adoption of an agreement in this form, it then goes to the Board of Commissioners, and there is a public process before your board,
Mhm.
which has not in the past been entirely without controversy.
Yes.
One of our agreements was adopted by a 3-2 vote with 2 abstentions. On the other hand, I think that process has yielded some agreements. My understanding is that at least one of our franchisees has declined to enter into a similar agreement that Radnor has with any other municipality in Pennsylvania.
Aren't we good? We were very proactive in the beginning.
It has yielded some fairly good results, I
Right.
think.
The last thing, just a question, as far as the topic you were just discussing with the FCC rule. For people who have already applied, do our ordinance changes have any bearing on them? I mean, isn't this sort of like they were in before the law got changed?
They were in before the change. The change cannot possibly take effect before the expiration of the 60-day
Right.
period.
Well,
So they're
just
in under
divorce
the,
this. Let's divorce the 60-day rule.
you can't.
just
It's
on
a
a-
federal rule.
No. I'm just saying, under normal rules, for example, planning, if we want to change zoning and planning and we pass an ordinance, if someone had applied prior to the introduction of that ordinance.
It would go, it goes under the old rule.
Right, okay,
Is
and
the
that's, I
answer.
just want to,
Yeah, but the 60-day rule
oh, yeah,
is federal. We can't do anything about that. And it applies to those applications which were pending
right.
as of the date of the FCC's order.
So stonewalling is no longer an effective tactic.
Stonewalling is not permissible. Well, it's permissible, but it'll get you sued.
Yeah, Okay.
Yeah,
Thank
our
you.
goal is to try and ensure that the township doesn't get faced with FCC litigation
Right.
unnecessarily. And the response time built into their order is difficult in the way small townships like this operate.
Have we talked to our representatives about it?
Who's that?
Sestac, for example?
We have not lobbied.
We haven't lobbied for change, and indeed, the municipalities were quite well represented in their comments before the FCC. It is possible, I suppose, to appeal the order, but that is a very expensive process, and I doubt that this township would want to undertake that at this point.
Yeah, and interestingly, when the order came out, we got a blast email from our communications counsel in DC, who I think is fairly stating it, of a mind that there are provisions in the the regulations that are subject to challenge, and he believes are probably not going to withstand a challenge. Question is who brings that challenge, whether it's a trade group or an interest group on behalf of similarly situated municipalities or some other trade group. That remains to be seen whether they will be challenged. And I'm not conversant enough with the procedure to know whether the effectiveness of those regulations is stayed pending the adjudication of the challenge. But at least there is a sense that they can be challenged.
The time limits for there are 2 time limits, and it depends on where you want to challenge. If one wants to challenge in the Third Circuit or in any other circuit except the District of Columbia Circuit, the time limit expires in 2 days.
Guess we're not
If
gonna do that.
if one wants to challenge the rule in the District of Columbia Circuit, I believe it's 90 days from the date of the order.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you very much. Are there any other questions? Move to adjourn. Thank you. We'd like to wish everybody a happy, safe, and gracious holiday season, and we'll see you all back here next year, God willing.